Sword Art Online is the best anime.
You sack of wine!
Troy is awesome. It's one of those movies that reminds you why you love watching movies so much. Troy gave me peace in a lifetime of war. It's got everything you want. Epic battles, larger than life heroes, and a story that pulls you in and keeps you hooked. It's the kind of movie that's so well done. You feel like you're in the middle of the action, totally gripping from start to finish. They'll be talking about Troy for 1,000 years. In 1,000 years, the dust from SAO's bones will be gone, and its name won't remain. What makes Troy stand out is that there's a lot of heart and intensity here too. The characters are memorable, the stakes feel real, and it's got that old school Hollywood feel that we don't see much anymore. And honestly, we need more movies like Troy nowadays. If they ever tell my story, let them say I was a fan of Troy. Anime like SAO rises and falls like the winter wheat, but movies like Troy will never die. Unlike SAO, Troy actually respects its audience. Troy has characters who feel like real people. They struggle, they make hard choices, and they fight for things that matter. And every moment keeps you hooked. All my life I've lived by a code, and that code is simple. Hate SAO, love Troy, and don't defend SAO. You watch Troy and you're invested in every scene. Imagine if SAO was actually good. Wouldn't that be a sight? SAO is a mess. It has shallow characters and bad writing. The story doesn't go anywhere meaningful. It's all surface level flash with no depth. If you're wondering why I chose the life of an SAO hater, I chose nothing. I was born and this is what I am. Troy's the kind of movie that sticks with you, while SAO's forgettable fluff. Before my time is done, I will look down on SAO's corpse and smile. If you're watching SAO over Troy, you're seriously missing out on one of the best movies ever made. SAO fans are wretched things. Here's a breakdown of Troy and why it's much better than SAO.
We're diving into the world of ancient Greece to see how the movie Troy stacks up against Greek mythology. If you love epic battles, heroic legends, and timeless stories, you're in for a treat. We'll break down the key differences between the Hollywood blockbuster and the classic tales from Greek myths. Whether you're a history buff, a movie lover, or just curious about Greek mythology, this video will give you a fresh perspective on a well-known story. The movie takes place 3,200 years ago. The Trojan War, based on historical and archaeological estimates, is indeed believed to have taken place around 3,200 years ago, roughly in the late Bronze Age. It's traditionally dated to around the 12th or 13th century BCE, so this is accurate. After decades of warfare, Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, has forced the kingdoms of Greece into a loose alliance. Only Thessaly remains unconquered. This is accurate to Greek mythology, as depicted in various ancient texts, including Homer's Iliad. Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, is portrayed as a powerful leader who united various Greek kingdoms to participate in the Trojan War. However, Alexander the Great is the one who unified much of the ancient Greek world under his rule during the 4th century BCE, which is several centuries after the events of the Trojan War. Therefore, while Agamemnon is accurately depicted as a unifying leader in Greek mythology, the historical unification of Greece under one ruler was accomplished by Alexander the Great much later. Agamemnon's brother Menelaus, king of Sparta, is weary of battle. He seeks to make peace with Troy, the most powerful rival to the emerging Greek nation. In Greek mythology, particularly in the story of the Trojan War as told by Homer and other ancient sources, Menelaus, the king of Sparta and brother of Agamemnon, does not seek to make peace with Troy. Instead, he is deeply angered and seeks revenge against Troy for the abduction of his wife Helen by Paris, which was the direct cause of the war. Menelaus is one of the primary leaders among the Greeks, who rallies behind Agamemnon to wage war against Troy and to retrieve Helen. The idea of Menelaus seeking peace with Troy contradicts the traditional mythological narrative, where the Greeks, led by Agamemnon and Menelaus, are determined to bring Helen back and punish Troy for the offense committed against Menelaus. In the mythological narrative of the Trojan War, Troy is indeed a significant rival to the Greek forces. However, in the broader historical context, other entities, such as the Hittite Empire during the Bronze Age and the Persian Empire during the Classical period, were also major rivals to various Greek states. Achilles, considered the greatest warrior ever born, fights for the Greek army, but his disdain for Agamemnon's rule threatens to break the fragile alliance apart. In Greek mythology, particularly in Homer's Iliad, Achilles is indeed portrayed as the greatest warrior among the Greeks, known for his exceptional skills in battle. However, his relationship with Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces, becomes strained due to a dispute over honor and rewards. The conflict arises when Agamemnon takes the war prize of Achilles, Briseis. The Iliad actually begins in the 9th year of the Trojan War. The poem covers only a few weeks of this final year, focusing on key events and battles. A dog is shown. There are dogs in Greek mythology such as Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the entrance to the underworld. Cerberus ensures that the dead cannot leave and the living cannot enter without permission. Dogs are also mentioned in the Iliad. They are often depicted in a variety of contexts, including as symbols of loyalty, scavengers, and as metaphors for violence and death. Agamemnon talks to Triopas. He is a figure from Greek mythology mythology, known primarily for being a legendary king of Thessaly. According to some sources, he was a descendant of the sea god Poseidon. This divine lineage often gave mythical kings like Triopas a certain prestige. Boagrius is chosen to fight against Achilles. Boagrius is not a character from Greek mythology. However, Boagrius is the name of the principal river of Locris, an ancient region in central Greece. The river is mentioned in the Iliad, though it was only a modest-sized river. Achilles has overslept, and he's not with the army. He mentions that he was having a really good dream. There is no specific mythological account or classical text that mentions Achilles oversleeping in the context of the Trojan War. Dreams play a significant role in Greek mythology, and were often seen as messages or omens from the gods. Throughout Greek literature, dreams are depicted as a means through which gods communicate with mortals, offering guidance, warnings, or prophecies. In Greek mythology, there are several gods and goddesses associated with dreams and sleep. Morpheus is the god of dreams, and is often depicted as a winged god who can take any human form in dreams. His name, which means shaper or molder, reflects his ability to shape dreams. Hypnos is the personification of sleep, and is often closely associated with his twin brother, Thanatos, who personifies death. Together, they symbolize the peaceful passage from life to death. Hypnos is sometimes also considered a god of dreams, as he is responsible for bringing sleep and dreams to mortals. Achilles is played by Brad Pitt, who was around 40 years old at the time of filming the movie. In Greek mythology, Achilles is likely in his late 20s to early 30s during the events of the Trojan War. This estimation aligns with the portrayal of him as a youthful but seasoned warrior. A boy mentions that the mother of Achilles is an immortal goddess, and he can't be killed. In Greek mythology, the mother of Achilles, Thetis, is a sea nymph, which makes her a semi-divine being rather than a full goddess. She is known for her beauty and her association with the sea. She is married to the mortal Peleus, making Achilles a demigod, part mortal, part divine. Thetis possesses immortality and other supernatural attributes. As for Achilles being invulnerable and unable to be killed, this is a complex aspect of his myth. Thetis, aware of a prophecy that Achilles would die young if he went to fight in the Trojan War, tried to make him immortal by dipping him in the river Styx, holding him by the heel. This rendered his body invulnerable except for his heel, hence the term Achilles' heel, which was left unprotected and became his only vulnerable spot. In the movie, Achilles isn't invincible. He even says he wouldn't bother using a shield if he were. Here's a fun tidbit. Brad Pitt tore his Achilles tendon while filming a scene for the movie, which is quite ironic given the role he was playing. Agamemnon hates Achilles the most. This is accurate. The relationship between Agamemnon and Achilles is often characterized by intense rivalry, pride, and clashes of ego. Achilles kills Boagrius. This didn't happen in Greek mythology, since Boagrius isn't an actual character. Achilles is told to give a scepter to his king, but he refuses to do so. Scepters do appear in Greek mythology, often as symbols of authority and power wielded by gods, goddesses, and mortal rulers. In ancient Greece, a scepter was a staff or rod carried by kings, queens, and other figures of authority as a symbol of their sovereignty or divine favor. We move to the port of Sparta in Greece. In ancient Greece, Sparta was located inland, quite far from the coast. Unlike some other Greek city-states that developed significant ports and maritime activities, Sparta did not have a major port of its own. Menelaus and Helen dine with Paris and Hector. In Greek mythology, there is no specific account of these characters dining together. The interactions between Menelaus and Helen, who are Greek, and Paris and Hector, who are Trojan, are primarily depicted in the context of conflict rather than social gatherings or dining together. The characters pour out their drinks. This is known as a libation. They are part of Greek mythology and religious practices. In ancient Greek culture, libations were offerings of liquids, usually wine, water, or milk, poured out as a ritual act of respect, homage, or supplication to gods, spirits, or deceased ancestors. They were an integral part of religious ceremonies, festivals, and private rituals. Zeus is referenced. He is one of the most prominent figures in Greek mythology, known as the king of the gods and ruler of Mount Olympus. Helen and Paris are having an affair. This is accurate to Greek mythology. Helen's affair with Paris of Troy is a central element of the story that leads to the Trojan War. According to the mythological tradition, Paris, the son of King Priam of Troy, visits Sparta as a guest of Menelaus, Helen's husband. During his stay, Paris and Helen fall in love. Helen decides to leave and follow Paris back to Troy. The abduction or elopement of Helen by Paris, depending on the perspective, is what sparks the Greek expedition to Troy, which becomes known as the Trojan War. The love story between Helen and Paris is romanticized in the film. It's portrayed more prominently than in the source material. The original Greek myths, including Homer's Iliad, focus less on the romantic aspects of Helen and Paris's relationship, and more on the broader consequences of their union. While Helen's beauty and Paris's desire for her are acknowledged, the myths often highlight the roles of the gods and fate in bringing them together. Paris gives Helen a necklace of pearls from the Sea of Propontis. This is not a specific artifact or item mentioned in classical Greek mythology. However, the Sea of Propontis, also known as the Sea of Marmara, is a real geographical feature located between Europe and Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey. In Greek mythology, pearls themselves are not extensively mentioned as significant treasures or artifacts, in the same way as other mythical items like the Golden Fleece. Hector talks to Tecton. He is not a character from classical Greek mythology. Hector wants to make the proper offerings to Poseidon before they sail. He is one of the major gods in Greek mythology, known as the god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses. In ancient Greece, sailors and seafarers commonly made offerings to Poseidon before embarking on sea voyages. Poseidon was believed to have the power to calm the waters, ensure safe passage, and protect ships from storms and other dangers. Sailors often sought his favor and blessings before setting sail to mitigate the risks associated with maritime travel. Hector wonders if Poseidon prefers goats or pigs as a sacrifice. Both goats and pigs were sacrificed to Poseidon in ancient Greek religious practices. They were valued for their meat, and their sacrifice was seen as a gesture of respect and devotion to Poseidon. Also, director Wolfgang Petersen's next movie would be titled Poseidon. Paris says that he'll have no trouble sleeping on the seas because the sea nymphs will sing lullabies to him. In Greek mythology, sea nymphs are often depicted as beautiful and enchanting beings whose songs were melodious and alluring. However, the association of their songs with soothing lullabies for sleep is less common. Instead, their songs often had more complex effects on mortals, from enchanting them to leading them astray, or even causing them harm in some stories. Hector mentions that Paris stole their father's horse when he was 10 years old. In Greek mythology, there is no specific account of Paris stealing his father's horse at the age of 10. Paris shows Hector how he brought Helen along for the voyage. In Greek mythology, Paris brought Helen with him back to Troy, so this is accurate. Mycenae is shown with the sea in the background. Mycenae was located inland. It was situated in the northeastern part of the Peloponnese in Greece, approximately 15 kilometers, about 9 miles, from the coast, so the sea shouldn't be visible. After discovering that Helen had been taken to Troy by Paris, Menelaus asks his brother Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, to go to war with him to retrieve Helen and restore his honor. Agamemnon agrees, leading to the assembly of a Greek coalition and the launch of the Trojan War. This is accurate to the myths. Nestor says that Troy is built to withstand a 10-year siege. In Greek mythology and the accounts in various ancient texts, the Trojan War lasted for 10 years. Nestor is a character from Greek mythology. He is a wise and aged king of Pylos, known for his experience, counsel, and eloquence. Nestor mentions that they need Achilles and his Myrmidons. Myrmidons are a significant group in Greek mythology. They are known as fierce and loyal warriors who served under the command of Achilles during the Trojan War. In Homer's Iliad, the Myrmidons play a crucial role as the personal troops of Achilles. They are depicted as formidable fighters who follow Achilles into battle and carry out his orders without question. Ithaca is shown, which is a significant location in Greek mythology. It is best known as the home island of Odysseus, the hero of Homer's epic, The Odyssey. Sean Bean plays Odysseus. He's appeared in some other movies based on Greek mythology, such as Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, and Knights of the Zodiac. Odysseus is one of the most famous heroes in Greek mythology, known for his intelligence, cunning, and resourcefulness. Odysseus is shown with a dog. He has a dog named Argos in Greek mythology. Argos is particularly notable for his loyalty. Thea is shown. Thea is a region in Greek mythology, most notably associated with Achilles. Thea is located in Thessaly in central Greece. It is often described as a fertile and prosperous region. Achilles trains with his cousin Patroclus. In Greek mythology, he is not described as the cousin of Achilles. Instead, he is portrayed as a close companion to Achilles and a beloved friend. Some accounts suggest that he was also the romantic partner of Achilles. In Greek mythology, several male figures are depicted as having both male and female lovers. Odysseus says that he knew the parents of Patroclus. Greek heroes often gathered and trained together, and many of them had familial or personal connections that predated the war. Odysseus wants Achilles to join the war. In Greek mythology, there isn't a specific account of Odysseus personally asking Achilles to join the Trojan War. However, both Odysseus and Achilles are prominent Greek heroes who play crucial roles in the conflict against Troy. Achilles was initially reluctant to join the Trojan War. According to the myths, his mother, Thetis, disguised him as a girl and hid him at the court of King Lycomedes on the island of Skyros. However, when Odysseus and other Greek leaders sought to recruit Achilles for the war, they exposed his identity by presenting weapons, and Achilles could not resist their offer. Thetis is collecting seashells to make Achilles another seashell necklace. While seashells and marine elements are often part of the broader imagery associated with sea nymphs like Thetis, there isn't a specific mythological association that highlights Thetis in particular as being closely tied to seashells in the same way as other marine symbols or creatures. In Greek mythology, there is no specific mention of Thetis making Achilles any seashell necklaces. Thetis tells Achilles that he'll die if he goes to Troy. Thetis is aware of a prophecy that foretells the destiny of Achilles. He has the choice between living a long, peaceful life in obscurity or achieving eternal glory in battle at Troy, but dying young. Thetis knows that if Achilles chooses the latter, he will gain immortal fame, but will also meet an early death. Achilles is ultimately driven by his own sense of honor and glory, choosing to fight at Troy despite knowing the risks. Troy is shown. Troy was a city located in northwest Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. Hector and Paris reunite with their father Priam. He is a prominent figure in Greek mythology. He is the legendary king of Troy during the time of the Trojan War. He had many children apart from Hector and Paris. According to various sources in Greek mythology, he had a significant number of children with his wives and concubines. Some of the more notable ones include Cassandra and Deiphobus. Hector reunites with his wife Andromache. They have a newborn son. In Greek mythology, Hector was married to Andromache, and they have a son named Astyanax. Briseis is shown. She is the cousin of Hector and Paris. In Greek mythology, she isn't the cousin of Hector and Paris. She is a Trojan woman who becomes a captive of Achilles. She is often mentioned in relation to Achilles, rather than having familial ties to other prominent Trojan figures like Hector and Paris. She is said to be the servant of Apollo. Apollo is primarily known as the god of light, prophecy, music, poetry, healing, and archery. He is often associated with the sun and is depicted as driving the chariot of the sun across the sky each day. Apollo is the son of Zeus and Leto. The young men of Troy were devastated when Briseis chose the virgin robes. In Greek mythology, the servants or priestesses of Apollo were indeed required to be virgins. This requirement was part of the purity and ritual cleanliness expected of those who served in the sacred precincts of Apollo's sanctuary. Apollo is portrayed as the protector of Troy. In Greek mythology, Apollo is not specifically known as the protector of Troy. Priam mentions that when Hector was very young, he came down with scarlet fever. Hector did not contract scarlet fever in Greek mythology. Scarlet fever is a bacterial illness caused by the Streptococcus pyogenes bacterium, and it wasn't known or described in ancient Greek times. Helen says that Sparta was never her home. Her parents sent her there when she was 16 so she could marry Menelaus. This isn't accurate according to Greek mythology. Helen was born in Sparta. She is the daughter of Zeus and Leda, or in some versions Nemesis. Leda's husband, Tyndareus, was the king of Sparta, making Sparta Helen's home from birth. Helen married Menelaus, who became the king of Sparta after Tyndareus. The marriage took place after many suitors vied for her hand, and Menelaus was chosen. Paris says that he's the same age as Helen. Greek mythology doesn't provide specific ages for Paris and Helen, so their exact ages in relation to each other are not clearly defined. However, they are not typically portrayed as being the same age. Paris is often depicted as a younger prince of Troy. He is generally portrayed as younger than Helen. Helen, on the other hand, is typically depicted as a mature woman at the time of the events leading to the Trojan War. Her beauty and status as the most beautiful woman in the world are well established in the myths. Hector talks to a man named Lysander. He isn't a character from Greek mythology, but there is someone named Lysander who is an important historical figure from ancient Greece. He was a Spartan admiral. Achilles and the Myrmidons are the first to reach Troy. However, in Greek mythology, Protesilaus was the first Greek warrior to land on the shores of Troy. Protesilaus was eager to fight. Unfortunately, he was quickly killed by Hector. Ajax is shown. He is a prominent figure in Greek mythology, with two notable heroes named Ajax who fought in the Trojan War. Ajax the Great, son of Telamon, is renowned for his immense size, strength, and combat skills, second only to Achilles. He plays a crucial role in many key battles. In contrast, Ajax the Lesser, son of Oilus, is known for his swiftness and skill with the spear, though he is smaller in stature. His quick temper and impiety ultimately lead to his downfall, highlighting the diverse traits and fates of Greek heroes. Ajax uses a hammer weapon. In Greek mythology, Ajax is not typically associated with using a hammer as a weapon. Instead, Ajax the Great is renowned for his prowess in wielding a large shield and spear, showcasing his strength and skill in close combat. There's a golden statue of Apollo wielding a bow and arrow. Apollo is commonly depicted depicted as wielding a bow and arrows in Greek mythology. Apollo is a skilled archer, capable of shooting his arrows with great accuracy and precision. Apollo's use of the bow and arrows is featured in various myths. For example, in the myth of Apollo slaying the python at Delphi, Apollo uses his arrows to defeat the monstrous serpent. Additionally, Apollo's arrows were believed to bring plague and disease, as well as healing and protection, highlighting the dual nature of his powers. Gold is indeed associated with Apollo in Greek mythology. Apollo, as the god of light and the sun, embodies qualities of radiance, purity, and divine splendor. Gold, with its brilliant and enduring shine, symbolizes these attributes. It is often used in art and iconography to represent Apollo's divine nature and his association with the sun's golden rays. The second in command of Achilles is named Eudorus. He is from Greek mythology. He is primarily known as a companion and charioteer of Achilles during the Trojan War. He is played by Vincent Regan, who would later appear in Clash of the Titans, another movie based on Greek mythology. Ajax is honored to go to war with Achilles. Ajax the Great and Achilles are both prominent warriors among the Greek forces. They often fight alongside each other in battles against the Trojans. They are both valued for their strength, courage, and skill on the battlefield. Briseis gets captured. In Greek mythology, and specifically in Homer's Iliad, she is captured by the Greek forces during a raid on Trojan territory. Agamemnon has soldiers named Apharius and Haemon. Both Apharius and Haemon are figures from Greek mythology, but they aren't soldiers of Agamemnon. Agamemnon takes Briseis as his prize. In Greek mythology, Agamemnon did take her from Achilles. Glaucus and Velior argue with each other. In Greek mythology, Glaucus is a sea deity, often described as a minor god or sea god. He is associated with the sea and marine life. Glaucus is known for his transformation into a sea deity after consuming a magical herb, which gave him immortality and the ability to communicate with marine creatures. There seems to be no specific figure named Velior in classical Greek mythology. Glaucus mentions Tartarus. In Greek mythology, Tartarus is both a god and a place. It's a dark pit where the wicked and titans who fought against the Olympian gods are punished and suffer. It's located far below Hades, the realm of the dead. Tartarus is also personified as a deity, representing the primeval force of the abyss itself. This personification underscores its role as both a physical location and a divine entity within the hierarchy of Greek mythology. Glaucus claims that the city's walls had never been breached, but this isn't accurate in myth. Years earlier, Heracles besieged the city. Archeptolemus mentions that he spoke with two farmers today. They saw an eagle flying with a serpent clutched in its talons. This is a sign from Apollo. There is no widely recognized figure named Archeptolemus in classical Greek mythology. An eagle flying with a serpent clutched in its talons is indeed a symbol associated with Apollo in Greek mythology. This imagery is often depicted in ancient Greek art and is symbolic of Apollo's role as a god of prophecy, healing, and music. The eagle, as a bird associated with Zeus and sometimes with Apollo himself, represents divine authority and power. The serpent or python is significant because Apollo famously slew the python at Delphi, establishing the sanctuary of Delphi as his sacred site. Therefore, the eagle and serpent motif reinforces Apollo's divine attributes and his triumph over the forces of chaos. There's a statue of Aphrodite. She is the Greek goddess of love, beauty, and pleasure. She holds a significant place among the Olympian deities, known for her allure and influence over romantic relationships. Priam gives Paris the sword of Troy. Priam says that his father carried this sword, and his father before him, all the way back to the founding of Troy. In Greek mythology, there is no specific sword of Troy that holds a prominent or named status akin to other famous mythological weapons. Helen plans to turn herself over to Menelaus, but Hector stops her. In Greek mythology, specifically in Homer's Iliad, there is a moment where Helen regrets the consequences of her actions, which led to the war and the deaths of many, and considers returning to end the conflict and restore peace. However, she ultimately remains with Paris, influenced by her love for him and her desire to stay in Troy. Achilles says that he can see the faces of the men he killed on the far bank of the river Styx. This is a notable feature in Greek mythology. It is one of the principal rivers of the underworld. It's symbolic of death, transformation, and the passage from life to the afterlife in Greek mythology. Menelaus is about to kill Paris during their single combat duel. Paris crawls back to Hector and violates the agreement. In Book 3 of the Iliad, Paris challenges any Greek warrior to single combat to settle the conflict peacefully, and Menelaus accepts. The duel ends inconclusively when Aphrodite intervenes and spirits Paris away from the battlefield, avoiding his defeat. Hector kills Menelaus. In Greek mythology, Hector didn't kill him. Ultimately, he survives the Trojan War and returns home to Sparta with Helen after the fall of Troy. He doesn't have a clear or detailed account of his death. According to some later traditions and adaptations, he is said to have lived a long life after the Trojan War, eventually dying of old age in Sparta. Hector kills Ajax. In Greek mythology, Hector didn't kill Ajax. After the war concludes, Ajax becomes embroiled in a tragic dispute with Odysseus over the possession of the armor of Achilles. When the Greek leaders decide to award the armor to Odysseus instead of Ajax, Ajax becomes filled with rage and humiliation. He throws himself on his own sword. Coins are placed on the eyes of the deceased. In ancient Greek mythology and culture, coins were instead placed in or on the mouths of the deceased as payment for the ferrymen of the underworld to transport their souls across the river Styx. This practice was believed to ensure a safe passage to the afterlife. Plus, coins weren't even invented until much later, during the Iron Age. The dead are cremated. In ancient Greek mythology and culture, cremation was a common funerary practice. It was seen as a way to purify the deceased and release their spirit from the physical body. Nestor asks how long it is before the Hittites invade. They were an ancient people who lived in Anatolia during the Bronze Age. They were known from historical records rather than from Greek mythology. Achilles mentions Zeus, the god of thunder, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Ares, the god of war. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the supreme deity. He holds dominion over thunder, lightning, and the heavens. He is one of the principal deities in the Greek pantheon, known for his authority, power, and role as the ruler of Mount Olympus. In Greek mythology, Athena embodies wisdom, courage, and strategic warfare. Athena is often depicted as a wise and strategic advisor to gods and mortals alike, known for her intelligence, foresight, and skill in warfare. Ares is the Greek god of war in mythology. He is often portrayed as a fierce and aggressive deity, reveling in the chaos and bloodshed of battle. He is the son of Zeus and Hera. Briseis is about to kill Achilles, but she doesn't do it. In Greek mythology, there is no account of her attempting to kill Achilles. She falls in love with Achilles. This isn't as prominent or developed in the Iliad. Hector kills Achilles, but it actually turns out to be Patroclus. In the Iliad, he wears the armor of Achilles to inspire the Greek forces, while Achilles himself refuses to fight due to a dispute with Agamemnon. Mistaken for Achilles, Patroclus fights bravely, but is eventually killed by Hector. This leads Achilles to return to the battlefield to seek revenge. Patroclus got his throat slashed by Hector. In the Iliad, Hector manages to pierce him with his spear, delivering a fatal blow. Hector shows Andromache a secret underground tunnel. If he dies and the city is about to fall, he tells her to take their child and any survivors to Mount Ida. There are several mountains named Mount Ida, but the most famous is located in northwest Anatolia. This is where Paris famously judged which of the goddesses Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena was the most beautiful. Patroclus is cremated. In Greek mythology, he was cremated after his death, so this is accurate. Achilles goes to confront Hector alone. In Greek mythology, Achilles does confront Hector alone. Achilles also had new armor made for him. It was crafted by Hephaestus. Hector initially tries to avoid Achilles by running around the city walls several times. However, Athena appears to him in the form of his ally Deiphobus and urges him to turn and confront Achilles. This divine intervention convinces Hector to stop running and face Achilles in combat. Hector tries to make a pact with Achilles. He wants to pledge that the winner will allow the loser all the proper funeral rituals. In Greek mythology, Hector proposes a similar pact. Achilles ultimately wins the fight and kills Hector. This is accurate to Greek mythology. After killing Hector, Achilles mistreats his body, dragging it behind his chariot as a gesture of triumph and anger. Hector's body was dragged around the walls of Troy, but this doesn't happen in the movie. Priam goes to the tent of Achilles under cover of night to beg for the return of Hector's body. This does happen in Greek mythology. Priam, grieving deeply for his son and recognizing the need for proper funeral rites, manages to appeal to Achilles. Despite being enemies on the battlefield, Priam's heartfelt plea touches Achilles, who also empathizes with the grief of losing loved ones. Achilles agrees to return Hector's body to the Trojans for funeral rites, signaling a brief moment of truce and respect amidst the brutal conflict of the Trojan War. Priam tells Achilles that he knew his father. In Greek mythology, Priam did know the father of Achilles. They would have been familiar with each other. Achilles and Priam say that the funeral games last for 12 days. Funeral games were indeed a part of Greek mythology and culture. They were athletic and ceremonial contests held in honor of a deceased hero or notable figure. These games were considered a way to commemorate the deceased, honor their memory, and provide entertainment and diversion for the community. The duration of funeral games could vary depending on the circumstances and the status of the deceased individual. Achilles allows Briseis to go free. In Greek mythology, he doesn't allow her to go free, but instead keeps her as his companion. Achilles and Priam agree on 12 days of peace so they can play the funeral games. In the Iliad, the funeral games for Patroclus didn't last for 12 days. The games themselves took place over a single single day and included various athletic competitions, such as chariot racing, boxing, wrestling, and running. The Iliad concludes with the death and funeral of Hector. The rest of the movie is based on Quintus Smyrnaeus's Posthomerica. The Greeks give a giant wooden horse to the Trojans. In Greek mythology, the Greeks did indeed give a giant wooden horse to the Trojans, which is famously known as the Trojan horse. This cunning strategy is a central element of the mythological narrative surrounding the Trojan War. According to the myth, the Greeks constructed a massive wooden horse and concealed some of their best soldiers inside it. They then left the horse outside the gates of Troy and pretended to retreat, sailing away to a nearby island. The Trojans, believing the horse to be a peace offering or a gift to the gods, brought it into their city. At night, while the Trojans were celebrating their apparent victory, the Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse emerged and opened the gates of Troy for the rest of the Greek army, which had secretly returned under the cover of darkness. The Greeks then attacked and destroyed the city of Troy, bringing the war to a devastating conclusion. The Trojan horse isn't part of the Iliad. The famous story of the Trojan horse is found in later sources, such as Virgil's Aeneid and various other ancient texts and traditions. Odysseus is credited with coming up with the idea of the Trojan horse. The Trojans think that the horse is an offering to Poseidon. In some versions of the myth, the Trojans believed it was an offering to Athena. This deception was bolstered by Sinon, a Greek left behind to convince the Trojans of the horse's significance. Sinon claimed that the horse was an offering to appease Athena and ensure the Greeks could return home safely, and that destroying it would bring the wrath of the gods upon Troy. Paris thinks the horse could be a trap, but nobody agrees with him. In the traditional accounts of the Trojan horse myth, it is actually Laocoon, a Trojan priest, who warns that the horse could be a trap. However, Laocoon and his sons are then killed by sea serpents sent by the gods, which the Trojans interpret as a sign that he was wrong, and that the horse is indeed a sacred offering. Paris isn't the one who suspects the horse to be a trap. Instead, he, along with the rest of the Trojans, is generally portrayed as being convinced by Sinon's story and the supposed divine signs that the horse is an offering and not a threat. Paris gives the sword of Troy to Aeneas. He is a character from Greek mythology. He is a Trojan hero, the son of the prince Anchises and the goddess Aphrodite. He plays a big role in the events of the Trojan War and its aftermath. Odysseus kills Glaucus. In Greek mythology, there is no account of him killing Glaucus. He is killed by Ajax. Agamemnon kills Priam. In Greek mythology, Agamemnon didn't kill Priam. He was killed by Neoptolemus, also known as Pyrrhus, the son of Achilles, during the sack of Troy. Neoptolemus brutally killed Priam at the altar of Zeus. Agamemnon captures Briseis, but she kills him. In Greek mythology, she doesn't kill Agamemnon. In fact, there is no mythological account in which she kills anyone. Agamemnon's death occurs after he returns home from the Trojan War. He is murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra, and her lover, Aegisthus, as part of a complex tale of revenge and retribution that unfolds in the aftermath of the war. Paris shoots Achilles in the heel. In Greek mythology, Paris is often credited with killing Achilles by shooting an arrow that struck his heel. Aided by the god Apollo, the phrase Achilles' heel has since come to symbolize a critical vulnerability despite overall strength. The death of Achilles isn't mentioned in the Iliad itself. The epic poem ends before Achilles meets his demise. The death of Achilles is covered in later Greek myths and literary works. Achilles died before the actual sack of Troy. His death occurred shortly after he killed Hector. In Greek mythology, Paris meets his end during the Trojan War. He is fatally wounded by an arrow shot by Philoctetes. Achilles is cremated. In Greek mythology, his ashes are mixed with the ashes of Patroclus and interred within a golden urn near the Hellespont. The Trojan War lasted for 10 years in the Iliad, but it was condensed to a few weeks for the movie. The Greek gods were also major characters in the Iliad, but they don't appear in the movie since it takes a more historical and realistic approach to the story of the Trojan War, opting to focus on the human characters and their conflicts rather than the divine intervention commonly depicted in Greek mythology. As you can see, we've explored how the movie Troy stacks up against Greek mythology, diving into its differences and surprising similarities. Troy is an epic retelling of the legendary Trojan War that, despite its deviations from Homer's Iliad and Greek mythology, delivers an engaging cinematic experience. The film takes creative liberties with the source material to fit its blockbuster mold. While purists may take issue with these changes, the movie manages to capture the grandeur and tragedy of the Trojan War in a way that is accessible to a modern audience. The intricate sets and detailed costumes help to bring the ancient world to life, creating a visually stunning backdrop for the unfolding drama. The standout elements of Troy are undoubtedly its battle scenes and performances. The choreography and cinematography of the combat sequences are thrilling compelling and immersive, showcasing the brutal reality of ancient warfare. It succeeds as an entertaining epic that captures the spirit of heroism and tragedy at the heart of the Trojan myth. Did you enjoy this comparison? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more mythological insights, and ring the bell to stay updated. Which movie or show would you like to see analyzed next? Your suggestions fuel our next adventures into the world of myths and movies.
Troy is amazing. It's a true epic that combines intense battles, unforgettable characters, and a story that grabs you from start to finish. It's got depth, heart, and real stakes, making it a movie you can watch again and again. Sword Art Online, on the other hand, is a boring dumpster fire. It's all style and no substance, with shallow characters and a storyline that's all over the place, relying on gimmicks instead of giving us anything meaningful. Troy stands tall as a classic, while Sword Art Online feels like a flashy mess that's forgotten as soon as it's over. Skip Sword Art Online and watch Troy instead.
Additionally, enjoy this sarcastic parody trailer for another Brad Pitt film, Ad Astra.
This movie's one part epic sci-fi space adventure, and another part that's a heartwarming father-son family drama, which sounds pretty awesome on paper, but is ultimately just a huge bore that lacks action, tension, humor, and surprises. I mean, sure, the acting and visual effects are great, but they're pointless without an interesting story. Seriously, I almost fell asleep several times while watching this movie, and I sat through Titanic and Blade Runner 2049 without a problem. This movie was only about 2 hours long, and it easily feels like double or even triple that runtime. Get ready for a movie that tries way too hard to be pretentious, only to end up being filled with several glaring mistakes and plot holes. Like, why are there pirates on the moon? The movie clearly shows that traveling to the moon is extremely costly. A pillow and blanket alone cost $125. If you're on the moon, then you definitely aren't poor, and wouldn't be scrounging for scraps. Why do the Lima Project's malfunctioning antimatter power source create surges all the way back on Earth? The Earth is closer to the sun than it is to Neptune. Is the movie trying to say that they're somehow generating more power than the sun? I'm no Neil deGrasse Tyson, but that doesn't really make any sense. Watch as Roy McBride travels over 2 billion miles to Neptune in order to finally meet his father after they've been apart for nearly 30 years, only to be told that his father never thought about him once. Worst movie dad ever. At least Thanos and Darth Vader love their children. Do you like seeing people sitting and talking? Well, you better, because that's pretty much what all the characters do for most of the movie. What about voiceover? If you like that, then you'll definitely love this movie, because the majority of exposition is delivered by Brad Pitt through overly monotone narration. Honestly, why didn't they just call this movie Brad Astra instead? Interstellar. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.